It is week 16 of the NFL season. We're talking DFS here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, and I have a special, well-renowned, handsome guest with me this week. Check it out. We're coming up next. Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Coming at you a day earlier with the wacky NFL schedule here this week with the Saturday Slate. I'm Scott Jenstad, joined as always, nope, not today, but joined by special Jeff Erickson filling in, my normal baseball podcast host, filling in for Ryan Belongia. We appreciate that. Jeff, how are you? It's good to see you. I don't think we've ever done a football podcast, which is very strange to say because we've done about 9 million basebal podcasts, but I think this might be our first football one. I'm forgetting.
Right. I'm super excited. I like how you had 3 lies in one there. Special, handsome, well-renowned. No, X, no. But yeah.
Three lies and no truths.
Yeah, but it's all right. Super excited to do this. Hey, it's going to make me a better player this week, and I like that. And it reminds us that we have to talk baseball and golf soon.
Yeah, we do. There's a little bit going on in baseball, so I look forward. Maybe we should do a sometime January podcast catching up everything in the news, but that would be fun too. So, yeah. But we are here to talk DFS week 16. We'll be talking the Saturday slate. I know that sounds weird, but with Christmas coming on Sunday, there's only like a few standalone games on. Although I guess not standalone anymore when there's 3 of them. But there's only 3 games on Sunday. There are 10 games on Saturday, so that's kind of the main slate this week. I know we have a game tonight too, but Jeff, I know you love this. Only 2 late games. We have a weird slate: 10 games, 8 early, 2 late. Although I guess it's Cowboys Eagles is one of the late games, so they're really trying to focus on that one. Although my 49ers play late also, so I will be not watching the Cowboys Eagles as my main game. But we got 10 games this week, 8 early, 2 late. Let me let you know what's off the slate before we jump into this very interesting one. We got some primetime games we won't be talking about: Jacksonville and the Jets, the Raiders and the Steelers, Chargers and Colts. Those are some ugly primetime games, by the way. And then Sunday's even uglier. Packers Dolphins is kind of okay. And Broncos Rams is probably the game that looked the best 3 months ago, that looks the worst now. And Tampa and Arizona doesn't look great either. So we won't be jumping on those games. There's a Sunday slate for those games, and obviously we got Monday night with the Chargers Colts. But
is Raiders Steelers part of our slate?
Raiders Steelers is not part of our slate.
This is Saturday night.
Saturday night, yes. We have 10 games. That would be the 11th. So they have that. They have that as a kind of a standalone showdown on DraftKings and whatever.
Gotcha.
Whatever FanDuel calls their standalone contest. But Jeff, the biggest thing this week we got to jump into before we even talk about the games. This is an insanely weather built slate. It's there's a lot of weather games. Tonight's going to be crazy. Apparently, Jacksonville and the Jets, a lot of wind, but we've got a lot of low totals because of the fact there's a lot of weather kind of across the Midwest and East Coast this weekend. Of particular note, New Orleans and Cleveland, the lowest total in the NFL since Week 8 of 2007. That game's at 31.5 or 32 right now. It's supposed to be really bad weather-wise. Kevin Roth at the RotoWire, who does a lot of the weather stuff, has that as a red on his like list of how he marks the games. He goes green, yellow, orange, red. So that's a red.
Right.
Buffalo, Chicago's an orange on his list. Just looks like a lot of wind, some gusts up to 35 miles an hour. But so that game could be ugly too. And then we got a lot of games that are really cold, like Houston, Tennessee, Seattle, Kansas City, your Bengals against the Patriots. There's a lot of games that are supposed to be really cold, although I don't think that can't overreact too much to that. As long as it's clear and cold, you can just deal with that. But Buffalo, Chicago, and New Orleans, Cleveland look really gross this weekend.
Yeah, New Orleans, Cleveland looks like a service academy game. I mean, it's going to be really bad, and these are bad offenses to begin with too. Yeah. That's the tough part too. I mean, it makes it even harder. So we're looking at a pretty nasty game as far as that goes. We don't know if Nick Chubb's going to be able to go. Yeah. He was seen in practice today after missing the last 2 practices. We'll see about that. More on that later, but yeah, it really does. Makes us kind of like, okay, where's our warmth? Oh, yeah. Philly, Dallas. But guess what? Jalen Hurts isn't playing. So thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, it's tough to find the right games here. Obviously, we're doing this Thursday morning. Check weather Saturday morning, as we saw in Buffalo, Miami last weekend. Like it was going to be snowmageddon there, and all of a sudden it was cold, but it was really clear the first 3 quarters of that game. Josh Allen had his biggest game fantasy wise of the whole season. So we talked about this, and it looks like things are going to happen. Make sure you check it Saturday morning. This is this is gonna be a big Saturday morning to check weather. A lot of these games we're talking about being cold. Like if you get a little bit of wind or rain, like suddenly those become really tough games too. So you're always checking injury Saturday morning, but this is a check the weather also. You don't want to overreact, but for me, it's always wind that really freaks me out because that actually affects the passing game. I don't worry about cold, but a lot of precipitation, some wind. You start to get away from those. But let's jump into some what we look at with the Vegas totals. We got 10 games. Wildly, 6 of them have totals under 42. 4 of them have totals in the 30s. That's definitely a new record for this year. You usually get 1 or 2 of those. We got 4 there, but let's start with the higher total games. We have nothing over 50 this week with the Vegas totals. We do have 3 games that are over 46. Probably the games that people are going to be stacking, taking a look at. We've got Seahawks Chiefs at 48.5. Supposed to be cold, but the weather's supposed to be okay there. Giants Vikings is beautifully indoors in Minnesota, so that's a 48 total. And then Eagles Cowboys, you mentioned earlier, a fun game. Obviously, no Jalen Hurts, but that's 46 and indoors too. I think that people are going to be flocking towards the indoor games and probably Seahawks Chiefs because that looks like a really fun back and forth. Of these 3 games, it's one of those like you're looking at like that's the game I want to attack. That's the game I want to stack. Do you have like a real favorite among these 3?
I'm tempted to go Giants Vikings.
Yeah, that's me too.
I think the Giants defense is not bad. But Minnesota's defense, we know is just horrific. Yeah. It's so wild to see an 11-3 team be so bad defensively. We belabored the point time and again that, the record doesn't match what we see on the field. What we saw with the Colts last week. I know, granted, the Colts had a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown that made life a lot easier for them. Nonetheless, they still put up 33 points. It's a lot of that, 18 other points. Excuse me, math is hard. 19 other points. But part of the problem for them was that they didn't score touchdowns. They settled for all these field goals. And if they get 1 more touchdown, they win that game. And it was so bad that they had to bench their starting quarterback. But looking at what we've got again, yeah, exactly. This time for Nick Foles, at least. So it's they can do something. Yeah. But you want to attack the Vikings. And I know it's a leap of faith to go with Daniel Jones, but I like that, Barkley's going to be like majorly rostered. Yeah. But I think Jones and Slayton merit our attention too.
Yeah, I definitely like that. When we talk about stacks, that's definitely one that I think people are going to play just because Daniel Jones is priced so low on DraftKings. I think Seahawks Chiefs can be popular. Geno Smith is really cheap this weekend. He's 5,800. I think a lot of people are just be like, well, that's the highest total game. Give me the cheap quarterback. Easy to play DK just because Tyler Lockett's out. He's going to get fed. You could play Marquise Goodwin as a cheap guy. And then, you can come back with any assortment of Chiefs. If you want to go cheap with Goodwin, you can come back with Kelsey. There's a lot of different ways to go. And a lot of people are going to play Jerick McKinnon off he's the RB1. If you take the last 2 weeks combined, which is crazy to say out loud as a 49ers fan who had Jerick McKinnon and never put up anything near an RB1 game. I actually kind of like Eagles Cowboys. I think Gardner Minshew will be serviceable, and this Cowboys defense is not quite the same that it was as the start of the year. They got shredded by Trevor Lawrence in the second half last week. Everybody's talking about how Dak throws the pick 6 in the game, but I think Lawrence had something like 250 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second half alone. People forget Jacksonville had 7 points at halftime in that game, and then all of a sudden he ended up with 316 and 4, whatever it was. I think that Eagles Cowboys. The Cowboys are going to be able to score. They've got all their guys healthy. The Eagles still have a lot of weapons, even with Gardner Minshew. I think that game, if I was going to take kind of a sneakier game, I think that game goes over the total of 46.
Yeah. My concern in that game is, okay, the Eagles are 13-1. They're not playing their starting quarterback. What if they decide, okay, AJ Brown, he's been banged up a lot. Come watch the game from the sidelines here. We'll do the same, maybe we'll do the same with Devonta Smith. They got Dallas Goedert coming back this week. Is he going to be full go? You can see them just dipping their toes in the pool in this game. We're going to go very vanilla. We're not going to show you anything because we're going to probably see you in the playoffs again. I could see that all happening. The counter argument is it's the Cowboys. They don't want the Cowboys.
That's the thing, right? If it was any other team, we're going to play you again, but I can't imagine they see the stars over there. They travel down there, they do that. But It's probably, and you look at the way the playoffs match up. Like that is a very, very likely second round game. Because Dallas would be the 5 seed. They're probably going to beat Tampa or whoever the heck comes out of the South. Dallas will be the 1 seed, unless Minnesota or 49ers get upset and then kind of topples that whole thing. And then because they reseed by seed, that could be a very likely second round game. To be a fun game, but I don't know. We're talking a prime time Sunday night game on Christmas. I have a hard time seeing AJ Brown being cool with that.
Yeah. By the way, Minnesota getting to be in the first round. I think there's going to be a lot of people betting on that too.
It's funny because obviously a Niners fan, they're probably going to be the 3 seed. The Vikings comeback, made this getting the second seed a little tougher. But I guess Minnesota won't play anybody really good. They'll probably play the Giants or the Commanders. Or
so it could be a rematch from this week too for that one.
Yeah, it could be. The Niners could play the Commanders. What's the spread? Say the Niners and Vikings win, and the Niners travel to Minnesota. Are the Niners favored by like 3.5 on the road in that game?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's about the line based on what we've seen. That people don't believe him. I mean, Minnesota was just an underdog at Detroit a couple weeks ago. I think the Niners are definitely favored on the road in that game.
So currently the Giants are the 6, the Commanders are the 7. The Giants, I mean, they're like they could clinch this week the playoffs, which is just blows my mind. This is a team that just got destroyed 2 weeks ago by the Eagles, just destroyed.
Yeah.
The Packers still have a chance. The Lions and Seahawks still have a chance. I mean, the Seahawks are kind of sinking. The Lions are ascendant. It's just so weird to see the Lions playing so well. If the Lions go to Minnesota in the first round of the playoffs, that line might be less than 2.5. It might be pretty close to a pick 'em.
I was gonna say I think pretty close to a pick 'em too, based on the fact they just beat them. And it's just weird. The bottom half of the NFC is teams that we thought were gonna be good. You got Tampa Bay, you got the Rams, you got the Cardinals. There's like a lot of teams in there that we're gonna be contenders and have just fallen apart. Based on poor play and now a bunch of injuries. But I think Arizona and the Rams are probably the 2 most disappointing teams. I mean, 4-10 for both those teams is not something anybody saw coming.
No. And the Rams, I mean, it's the offensive line the start of it, and then the injuries piled upon injuries. I get that there. Plus, it's their strategy coming home to roost. They got their Super Bowl.
Yep.
What's a draft pick? They traded almost all of them away, and then they blew others.
I like how you cleaned up the draft pick comment there for the podcast. That was good.
Yeah, exactly. I think Cliff Kingsbury should be fired by the Cardinals, but he might get bailed out because, hey, we lost Kyler, but they were already terrible before they lost Kyler. So I don't know.
As you know, Kyler does nothing for me. So I think that I don't think they'll ever win with him there.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have turned on that one there. Yeah. I mean, ask his ex-teamate there on his podcast. But
that's right. Patrick Peterson really aired him out.
Yeah.
So we got those top 3 games. I think they're all going to be popular. There's a couple indoors. There's one, the Seahawks Chiefs, that people are going to like. There's a middle game here. We've got the Lions at Panthers is 44, and everything else is under 42. Real quick in those games, we have your Bengals against the Patriots, 41.5. An outside. Obviously, New England offense is rough. Bills Bears is 40. Obviously that's a game where the Bears you're bringing that total down. The Bills defense is good. Commanders 49ers 39.5. Then we get really low. Falcons Ravens 37.5. Texans Titans 37. We mentioned Saints Browns actually 32, which is, like you mentioned, a service academy game. That really is the Army Navy over under right there. What do you like in the bottom here? Is this going to be like I'll take some pieces one off of here? Are there any of these games you're like, I kind of want to get a sneaky stack in here that in these bottom 6 or 7 games?
I mean, I'm intrigued with Bills Bears. I mean, the weather is extreme, and I think that's why it's so low, because the Bears can't stop anybody.
Yeah.
And Fields isn't dangerous enough to do some damage. So I could see it, except if the weather is like, as we've seen at times, that apocalyptic, that shuts down everything. But it's not like the Bills haven't played in bad weather before. It's not like the Bears haven't played in bad weather before. I think the same thing applies to Cincy and at New England. I know New England's got a good defense. I know Cincy is on the road again. I think they could find a way to move the ball in this game.
Yeah, I actually do too. That was the one that I looked at. I mean, I'm always good with Joe Burrow. It wasn't great last week, but it still ended up with 4 touchdowns. He had 200 yards passing, and on 39 passes, his YPA was really low. But you look up, you're like, well, fantasy wise, who cares? That 4 touchdowns, that really works well. Do you buy into the you can't play Jared Goff on the road narrative? He played into it again last week, only 1 touchdown. He now has 3 touchdowns on the road and 20 touchdowns at home. It's Carolina though. They can be scored upon. It looks like it'll be cold there, but not too weathery. Do you just kind of cross Goff off because he's on the road, or at the price do you think he's playable at all?
I don't think you really try to beat Carolina in the past that much either, though. I think you run the ball against them. So I think the combined factors of road, weather, and how to attack Carolina leads me away from using them in DFS.
You just lined us up for DeAndre Swift seeing like 7 snaps and that's it.
I know, right? Yeah.
That's a situation that I finally just kind of avoid and stay away. Yeah, these bottom games are pretty gross. As we talk about positions here, we'll talk about a lot of one-offs, and this guy Fez is a good matchup here. I think we'll obviously talk about Derrick Henry in that Texans-Titans game. He literally murders the Texans every single time they play. 4 straight games.
Not literally, Scott. Stop abusing the language.
Pretty close, Jeff. Pretty close. When you go
I'm gonna call Weird Al on you here for the word crime there.
When you go over 200 yards 4 games in a row rushing, I think it might be actual little murder there, but no, he just dominates them. So we'll talk about a lot of one-offs, but obviously those are the games that are pretty low totals. As you look at this slate, looking at quarterback, we're just going to talk about some like who we think of in the chalk plays first, and we'll get into like particular stacks and positions. Is there a quarterback you think is going to be overly popular this week that really sticks out? I tend to think it will be that Seattle-Kansas City game. I think Mahomes will be the most popular of the pricey guys. I think Geno Smith will be the most popular of the cheap guys. You agree with that, or is there somebody else you think that maybe ends up most popular?
No, I agree with that. I think you'll get some people chasing Cousins at 63. I mean, that's a pretty nice price as well, and it's indoors, it's safe. They might have to be playing catch up again. What you want to see is the Vikings crap the bed in the first half, so they have to throw 700 times in the second half. That'd be ideal. Except unfortunately, you don't have the Colts to go against, so there is that. But I think, and I think you'll see some Daniel Jones high rostership. I think I'm really intrigued. I mean, Jones is my guy because I think everyone's going to be on Geno. I'll take Jones at 56.
Yeah, I think it's a nice pivot away from Geno. Jones is tough because you have to get the weeks where he runs. Like if you look at his fantasy weeks, like the weeks where he runs are the weeks where he actually pays off. And the passing is never huge. He's thrown for under 200 yards in 3 straight weeks. But when he runs, suddenly he's really interesting. And he's got Saquon to dump it off to. He's got Darius Slate. He's got a few weapons here and there. You don't love the weapons, but enough that. Minnesota's awful against deep passes, which is the weird thing because Daniel Jones, I think, has 2 touchdowns over 20 yards all year long, or he's actually if thrown in the air 20 yards all year long. So it's a matter of it's kind of what we do worse versus what you do worse, and who kind of steps up in there. But if he can get a couple deep passes, Slayton, he could really work. And like you said, that price is really really cheap. Yeah. What about running backs? Is there anybody that sticks out to you? You mentioned you thought Barkley was going to be pretty popular. Is there anybody else that sticks out to you? Is like everybody's going to have this guy this week?
I mean, McKinnon's still only 59. I think everyone's going to chase that.
That's the first thing I was going to ask you about. Is do you go back to it for a third time?
I feel like against that Seattle run funnel defense, I think I'm going to have some regrets if I don't. I think everyone's going to be on Henry and pay up for Henry in Texans week. I mean, the legend is spread far and wide now of this, but you do the Henry McKinnon combo. I think you'll see that in a lot of lineups because one lets you afford the other.
We've never done this. I didn't send you any names beforehand, but Henry and McKinnon were the 2 guys I had that stuck out pretty well. I think they're just kind of the obvious ones. When you get McKinnon under 6,000 after these last 2 weeks, it's the highest total game. You're going to want a cheaper piece of this game. It just if you don't play a Mahomes stack with a receiver, you can even do it with McKinnon too because he catches balls out of the backfield. I think he's just going to at 5,900. I think it's just so easy to click on that name at that price
for sure. So last week you were big on Kamara. At Cleveland, another great matchup for running backs at least. It is Army Navy. They are going to run the ball 1 billion times. Yeah. He's only 6,800. Can I talk you into a Kamara for a second week in a row without the touchdowns necessarily?
So it's funny because last week I think he's going to get touches. They're coming off the bye. They're talking about it. He had 23 touches. Like if you told me he had 23 touches, I would have been like, I'm as in as possible. He hasn't scored since week 8, which is crazy because that week he was the RB1. He had 3 touchdowns that week. Went crazy. The weird thing, it's been on Twitter 7,000 times, ran fewer pass routes than David Johnson last week, which is just like coaching negligence, malpractice, whatever you want to call it. But if you sign me up for 20 touches again, I'm certainly in. I like the fact that I don't think anybody's going to be able to pass the ball in this game. Cleveland cannot stop the run. They're 5.4 yards against the run. You know how many runs Alvin Kamara has over 20 yards this season?
It's got to be like super small.
It's smaller than that. It's 0.
Wow.
0.
Wow. That's crazy.
Wait,
impossible. I see him at 2 rushes over 20 yards.
I had 0, man. I have bad stat there.
I think it's 0 over 40. Just 2. 2 is really bad. 2 still it still illustrates your point.
Yeah, it does. I don't know where I got that. I don't remember where I got the stat. I think I must see it somewhere on Twitter.
But not only that, he only has 16 rushes inside the 20, only 5 inside the 10, only 2 inside the 5. So if he's not getting you long runs, he's not getting as many routes, and he's not getting red zone carries, what does he do? I have him in the stake league, so I know this one pretty acutely.
You're doing pretty well in the stake league, aren't you?
I am, but I've been sliding a little backwards lately. Still, I mean, you're going off in that league. I saw that there.
It was weird because the middle of the year I was kind of struggling, and the last 3 weeks have been huge. Like I think I've hopefully cemented myself into eating for free over the last 3 weeks. But there's a lot of people.
There's a pretty big teardrop.
There's a pretty big drop. You're right. My stat was no runs over 20 yards since week 7. So you're right on Kamara. Sorry about that.
How dare you?
Sir. I know I missed the key part of that. Yeah, if you're 20 touches again, I think I'm going to probably go for a 6,800. You get Kamara under 7,000. I think he's burned enough people. I don't think he'll be overly popular. And there's a running back right above him that I think I like more this week. So it might be tougher for me to get to Kamara than it was last week. For sure. What about receiver? Anybody who seems to be really popular? I don't think I see anybody expensive that's gonna be like obvious. Obviously, everybody's gonna want to play Justin Jefferson, but he's 9,300, so he's not gonna be that popular at that price. It's hard to fit him in, but I mean, it's obviously he's the best receiver in football. That's an amazing matchup. I like Chase 8,300 too. I like DK at 7,100, but I think it's kind of spread out. There's a lot of choices in the expensive ones. So there was nobody to me that stuck out in the expensive range that was like, obviously everybody's going to have him this week.
I agree. I think you're going to see that pretty well spread out. I think people are going to shy away from Brown. I think people are going to shy away from Diggs.
Yep, I do too.
I think you'll see a lot of CeeDee Lamb because of that. And he's not quite he's right in that demilitarized the DMZ between the high price guys and the medium price guys at 75. So, and easy for me to say apparently.
It's weird because the mid range is really barren this week. There's the 5s and 6s receivers, usually where I live. We've picked a lot of those really well this year, and there's not a ton of names, and there's a lot of guys under 5,000 that can be popular. So it's going to be a weird week where I think people will, kind of maybe pay up for 1 and then pay down for 2, something like that at receiver. There's not a lot. There's Juju and Terry McLaurin in the middle. People don't love to go against the Niners, although I think that you can play a receiver against the Niners because I don't
just stay away from the running backs.
Washington's not going to be able to run the ball, and unless someone breaks one. But I don't think they'll be able to run the ball regularly well. There's a lot of cheap guys. We'll kind of talk about those guys as we get down to receivers. But I think it's a pretty spread out week, and the middle's a little bit of a barren zone. But
I think the chalk is DK. I think at 7,100, no Lockett.
Yeah,
Chiefs game. They're going to be trailing. Goodwin's a little banged up. I think DK. I think DK Metcalf is going to be like as heavily rostered as any receiver has been all year.
Oh, wow. That's a bold statement. I like it. I think the other guy in there, a little cheaper. I think Juju Smith-Schuster under 6,000 in that same game will be popular just because he had a lot of targets last couple weeks. He had 10 catches last week. I think he's probably the guy that as you're scrolling through and you need someone in that middle range. He seems pretty easy to click on at 5,800.
Oh, sure.
Let's jump into to game stacks here. Talk more tournaments. And first, a note from our sponsors at Monkey Knife Fight. Football is officially back on Monkey Knife Fight with all the NFL action you're looking for. And if college football is more your speed, they got plenty of that too. A Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, and no math. It's just easy to play, easy to win daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com. You'll get your first game free, then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit match instantly up to $100. So what are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. Also, a few notes from our sponsors, the Blue Wire Network. Thank you for indulging us there. We appreciate it. So, Jeff, we talked about some games already, but is there a favorite game stack for you? It sounds like you might be leaning towards Daniel Jones in Minnesota, but as you're kind of building your main lineups here, is there a quarterback receiver stack you find yourself kind of moving towards at the top of the list?
Sure. I think Jones Slayton is really, I think that's going to be my favorite, but I mean, as the tough part is the implied score for New York isn't that high. It's 21 and 3/4. Yeah. And you've alluded to Jones not necessarily being a deep ball guy. He's like, he'll hit one deep ball a game. It's usually Slayton that gets it though.
It is.
And the thing is, it's just we're looking for warmth. We're craving warmth there and all that. But the tricky part is stack wise is finding a second component of that. I mean, I guess rarely do you do quarterback, receiver, and a running back.
Yeah.
But with the Giants, you kind of have to because there's no second wide receiver. Hodgins is, sure, it could work this particular week. It could be a Hodgins week, I suppose. But
yeah, or you could sneak in a Daniel Bellinger at tight end to get cheap there and maybe do it. But yeah, it's hard to really want that many pieces of this game. I think what you want is Daniel Jones with maybe one receiver, and you hope Daniel Jones runs for 65 yards and a touchdown, and then you kind of build that, and then you come back with. When you're going that cheap, you can actually come back with Jefferson, which is a really nice aspect of that Daniel Jones stack. Yeah,
that's right.
I kind of lean towards the Seahawks. I always like. I don't love the Chiefs' defense. I think that they give up some plays, and it's a game where they're going to be trailing. Obviously want to check the weather here, but Geno and Metcalf together is also cheap. Last week against the Niners was Geno's first game without multiple touchdowns since week 6, so he's been really, really solid. The price is really cheap. He does lose Lockett, but I think that they can probably piece together with a combination of Goodwin and Fant. I guess is it's not Tyler Lockett, but enough pieces there. Should be a good game script, high scoring, fast game. Kansas City's allowed a top 12 quarterback in 9 of 11 weeks, so they've been giving up, and a lot of that is they get ahead and they kind of give it up on the way back. So I like that piece. I think that if you can find a way to make it happen, you find enough cheap guys. I think that Mahomes Kelsey is probably the top stack of the week. That I'm not really breaking ground there, but right. Mahomes is just insane right now. 300 plus yards in 8 of 9 games in a season where we've seen a lot of quarterbacks, not throw for as many yards. When he had 336 and 2 touchdowns and ran for 1 last week against Houston, he had 20 straight completions to end that game. I think he's like 6 away from the record. I think that's like a record that carries over week by week. But Seattle's 21st in YPA. You can get after them. They faced a load of backups the last few weeks too, so that number's even kind of maybe even a little worse than it should be based on who they faced. But I think Mahomes is obviously the easy one here. But I like Geno coming back on the other side. Is there any other game stacks you like? Do you find yourself thinking about Allen and Diggs or Allen and someone else, or just the weather there kind of scares you considering Allen's fully priced?
Yeah, I'd have to check the wind. It's the wind that is our biggest enemy, and obviously, a snowstorm is an enemy, but snow in and of itself, cold in and of itself, we can deal with. Wind, that just kills a game. And we see that's what we see in Cleveland. I think I want to check the same thing in Foxborough too, because we've seen wind. I mean, we've seen weather destroy games there too. But I mean, you might get Burrow Chase lesser roster than usual.
I think you definitely will. I think with it not being one of the top 3 total games, I think that it's expensive enough that people are not going to be willing to pay up for it. And that is a really spicy one in terms of a kind of a sneakier stack. I do really like that.
Yeah. And yeah, how often do you get that chance? You've got to take advantage of it there.
Yep.
I'll also say, if you want to go crazy, a little Purdy Kittle again, recreate that magic against the Commanders, as I think the Commanders will get after Purdy, and that's what that does worry me some. Yeah. I don't think you can necessarily run all over him like the Niners did with McCaffrey's historic first half usage last week. Yeah. I think they're going to have to diversify a little bit there. But you could go pretty sneaky. The problem is no Debo. You want to say, okay, we'll just go to Ayuk. Well, Ayuk's got like a 16% target share. Yeah. With under Purdy. He doesn't throw downfield all that much, although then again, they're GBG, but still, what do you think? You're the Niners guy.
It was weird because that first game where he came in, he just peppered Ayuk. He had 9 targets in that game. Then I think he has 4 and 3 the last 2 games. Some of that last week they were up and they didn't need to throw. And he had that nice deep ball in the game before against Tampa Bay to Ayuk. But yeah, haven't.
Beautiful route on that one there.
So the weirdest thing about the Brock Purdy whole thing is that there is zero doubt that Shanahan is more comfortable calling plays for him than he was for Jimmy or for Trey. It's the weirdest thing. He calls more interesting stuff. Brock Purdy sees the it was like twice a game where Jimmy would miss a wide open, like Kyle Shanahan called a beautiful setup, like set up for a quarter, and Jimmy would miss it. And Purdy has seen, like, everybody talks about the fake left, fake right pass they had to Kittle that was beautifully drawn up. But the second Kittle touchdown, he was his fourth progression on that pass. Like, it's not talked about. Like, he looked at three other guys, then hit Kittle. And the Niners have not had that for years. Like, Jimmy does a lot of things well, but going to the fourth progression is definitely not one of them. And I think Kyle's weirdly more comfortable calling plays. In that first game, they threw the ball 37 times. It's just a matter of, how the game script goes. If they get up, obviously he's gonna feed guys. But I think he's comfortable throwing passes. I think that's interesting. Is that the Purdy Kittle is an interesting one. What do you do with a quarterback that's starting with really good weapons that's under 5,000 this week? We have Gardner Minshew going into Dallas at 4,800. He's got A.J. Brown. He's got Devontae Smith. You mentioned Dallas Goedert back this week. We don't know how healthy. Got some running backs you can kick it off to. Dallas, so we mentioned, got lit up by Trevor Lawrence last week. Cheap quarterback in one of the higher total games. Is there any way you get behind a Minshew stack here at 4,800?
I can see it. There was a Minshew Nation was calling for him to start last year.
Yep, I remember.
Where's that gone? But the thing is, Minshew's fine. Yeah, he is, as one of the backups out there, he's a better one. He's not. I think the calling for him was a little overboard. I do think that he's a backup for a reason. But yeah, you give him these great tools.
Yep.
I don't think it's a great matchup. I think Trevor. I think some of what Trevor Lawrence did last week was because Trevor Lawrence is in
really
full bloom.
Yeah,
I think he's just. I love what he's done the last five or 6 weeks. He's had one bad game, and that was more than the defense than it was on him. That was the Detroit game. But it's just we expected to take it to the carnival. He got hurt in that game. I'm amazed though. After that, he's had like little practice time 2 weeks in a row and just lit it up nonetheless. And he's making good decisions. I'm curious to see how he does in a terrible matchup, terrible weather game in the Thursday night game against the Jets. I'm forced to use him, by the way, in prime time because Hurts is out. So
why quarterback? Your quarterback is one of those things like, as long as I have my two, I'm good. My quarterback's been bloodshed in the NFFC so far this year. It's been a lot of people had Mike White as their backup. A lot of people obviously had Kyler Murray. He got hurt after the Fab deadline. It was it's been ugly at quarterback.
Yeah, I might be forced to start a gimpy Jeff Wilson at running back though. So that I'm paying for it at running back. That's where I'm getting hurt because I may not have Chubb. So we'll see about that.
I'm in the primetime playoff with you too, and I lasted about a minute and a half because I have Jonathan Taylor and he got hurt literally on his first play.
Gross.
Somehow I limped. I got into the playoffs with drafting Jonathan Taylor first overall. I was very proud of that, and then it was just an absolute destruction. It was brutal.
Yeah. So yeah, Minshew. Yeah, why not? If I don't play lots of lineups. But if I did, I would have some Minshew lineups.
Yeah, it's just so easy. You go Minshew, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb as a start. You coming back with Lamb, and so I think you're so cheap at quarterback. You can still get an expensive running back in. You can kind of make a really interesting and impressive build if Minshew can just be okay. You don't need him to be great at 4,800. He can just be okay. You mentioned the matchup. I mean, Dallas, obviously, we talked about they've struggled a little bit lately, but still really good. Can get after the quarterback, so it's an interesting one. But
and keep in mind, you're going to be able to find a cheap defense this week.
Yep.
And be able to roll with that save it's 1,000 here, 800 there, saves you.
Although you can't play the really cheap Cowboys defense this week if you play Gardner Minshew, I suppose.
That is true.
Let's go to running backs. Talking about the expensive ones, we'll just go over 7,000 just to use a mark there. You mentioned Derrick Henry. I think that going to be very popular this week. Over 200 yards rushing, 4 straight games against the Texans. Got back on track the last couple of weeks. He's been over 100 yards the last couple of weeks. He was 104 and a touchdown against the Chargers last week. Nicely had 7 catches the last 2 weeks. When you can get any kind of production from Derrick Henry in the pass game, that's just a huge bonus. You don't really count on. Houston's allowing 5.1 yards per carry. They've given up 30 plus fantasy points to 5 different running backs this year. It's just they can't stop the run. Derrick Henry can run it. Ryan Tannehill's not playing, so that's maybe it breaks it down a little bit. We'll have Malik Willis in that game, but at least he has a running aspect to his game where maybe that helps Henry get some open holes. But aside Henry, we have C-Mac is 8,800, Saquon Barkley 7,900, Nick Chubb questionable. Sounds like he's going to play, but we don't know for sure. 7,700. Dalvin is 7,200, Ramondre Stevenson 71, and Tony Pollard 7,000. He's slowly entering this list of the higher price running backs. What else do you do in this range aside from Derrick Henry? What else are you finding yourself clicking some names here?
I mean, I would be shocked if Barkley's not heavily rostered. I've obviously I think Henry and McKinnon are going to be the two most rostered backs, but I think it's pretty close with Barkley and Pollard. Pollard, the Eagles. You can run the ball against the Eagles. You can have running back performance against the Eagles. Montgomery last week had a game against them. There,
Montgomery was in the winning millionaire lineup. Last week, which it was. I did not expect to see that name in there, and the 2 touchdowns was huge.
Yeah, massive. So Pollard, he's going to get his. I mean, I think some people even will play Zeke. He has a touchdown streak going there, so you'll see that happening. So yeah, I think among the expensive guys, I think those are the ones I'd go to the most. What do you do with Ramondre Stevenson? Last week, he flummoxed everybody, probably on a lot of real teams' benches, let alone DFS, going off against the Raiders. Josh Jacobs used to be the king of, I'm on the injury report, so people shy away from me and I'll go off.
Yep.
Stevenson did that against him last week.
And it was so tough because it was one of the later games too. So like there were 4 late games, but if you had to make a decision at 10 in the morning Pacific time, you kind of had to sit him. And then he 19 carries, 172 yards. He only played, I think he had like 58% of the touches in the backfield, something like that. But he was really good. Damian Harris might be back this week. Obviously heard that before. My problem with there is since he's just good against the run, they're under 4 yards per carry. When they have their healthy defensive tackles, they're just really, really good.
Yeah, DJ Reader plays. Yeah. Yep. That's all it's about. Yeah. Plus, Jermaine Pratt as a linebacker has really stepped up his play this year too.
Kind of similar to the Niners when Eric Armstead and Kinlaw are playing. You pretty much can't run the ball against them. So I tend to avoid it mostly because I really like Dalvin Cook this week at 7,200. He looked great in the second half last week. It's a weird game because they were down obviously 33-0 at halftime, whatever it was. And he hadn't done much. You're like, well, my Dalvin Cook shares are done for this week. All of a sudden, he had a lot of carry. He had like 12 carries in the second half. He had that long 65-yard screen play that ran for a touchdown. Ended up with, I think, his best yardage game of the season. He had a lot of yards. He's faced a lot of tough defenses in a row, and I think that the price is down because of that. But the Giants is nice here. They allow over 5 yards per carry to running backs. You can run against them. Great matchup if they can get the lead. We say that very cautiously with Minnesota because obviously they've been a very weird team to figure out and try and predict. With that Lions game, and then obviously last week at the big deficit. But they are favored in this game against the Giants. If they can get a lead, they're favored by I think 3.5. If they get a lead here, I just think Cook stays involved no matter what. Now he's getting a ton of touches. He's getting very the whole Madison getting touches has kind of gone away. It's been mostly Cook the last few weeks. I just love this matchup. I think he's underpriced 7,200. So I think I go Cook over Stevenson. I hate to say it, even over Tony Pollard, who I've loved a lot of weeks this week. But this year, I think I go Cook this week in the $7,000 range and pretty easily for me above those two guys.
I get that there. And I just wrote that down. I'm going to make sure I get some lineups with him in there. So yeah,
for me, it's him or Saquon. I do like Saquon too. Saquon finally looked healthy last week. That was the first time in a while where he finally looked like the Saquon that we love. He had 23 touches. He had 8 targets, which is really nice. If he gets in that game where, again, we're talking about a game that's indoors, we love that this week. If Daniel Jones dumps it out to him 5 or 6 times, that just changes his projections so much. His yards per carry last week was the best he had since week 5. It's a tough matchup. Minnesota's good against running backs, but I think that Saquon, we saw early in the season, when he's healthy, he touches the ball so damn much.
I mean, if you do your sneaky Minshew stack, you could probably afford both Cook and Barkley.
Yeah, you could. It'd be nice. Even if you got even you went with your Daniel, I guess Daniel Jones is tough because obviously that's the same game as Saquon. But if you go, you go with a Goff play if you wanted to go there. I don't really love that outdoors, but yeah, I think Minshew is probably the way that you can get both those expensive guys in. What about the mid range? This has been a range that has been really good for us during the season. It's tougher this week. A lot of the the Pollard and Stevenson they've graduated up into the 7,000s. Right. We mentioned Alvin Kamara 6,800. We kind of talked about him at length earlier. I think he's again, if you give me 20 touches, I think he's very playable again. David Montgomery, you mentioned at 6,500. He had the really good game last week with a touchdown receiving and a touchdown rushing. We got Kenneth Walker down here. We have Miles Sanders. We have Jerick McKinnon, 5,900, who I know we talked about already. That's going to be popular. J.K. Dobbins down here too.
That's the one I wanted to talk about there.
5,800. It's a weird situation because he's been over 100 yards back-to-back weeks, but on very few snaps. He does not look healthy when he runs. He says he's fine, but obviously doesn't have that burst back. For me, it's hard because it's hard to count on running at 8 yards a carry. But he's looked really good, and Lamar might be back this week. That helps him too. Either way, he'll have a running quarterback back there. What do you do with Dobbins at 5,800?
I think you play him. I think he's like a top 10 back. I mean, you got to get a little bit of a goal line luck. But the fact that Gus Edwards is there and running well in his own right makes it a little trickier. Lamar, that rubs both ways, but you can't do worse than Huntley has the last couple of weeks. My goodness, what a disappointment Tyler Huntley was. We were thinking, okay, we saw that Packers game last year.
Yep.
Yeah, we can find some fancy goodness out of that, and he was just horrible. I mean, I was traveling during the Cleveland game last week, so I had to kind of rewatch it on the quick replay later and all that. But oh my goodness, so bad.
30 passes for $140 is not gonna get it done.
No. So at least Lamar might not be himself, but he doesn't have to be himself to be a marked considerable improvement.
Yeah, he opens up rush lanes. Just the fact that he's Lamar and he's back there, you have to spy him. You have to account for him running the ball. It's just we've seen it for years with all their running backs. They get huge gaps to run through. Just what he brings and the fact that you got to pay attention to that.
Yeah. So I will have some Dobbins sprinkled in for sure.
So I sort of like as the ultimate pivot this week. He's popular last week. Did not come through. Was not horrible. With Jerick McKinnon playing well and being popular, I really like Isaiah Pacheco as a kind of a different play this week at 5,700. He was chalky last week, only played 27 snaps, but that was kind of a game script thing. Like they got in that weird game with Houston. They didn't get a lead. You want Pacheco with a lead, but McKinnon played a lot more snaps than him. But he was still 15 for 86 last week. He didn't have a touchdown, which obviously kept him down. It kept him under right around 10 points. He lost a fumble, maybe lost some playing time on that, but I think it was mostly game script. They were kind of in hurry up in that fourth quarter. They're trying to, every time, Houston had to lead in that fourth quarter. He can be really nice this week if they get a lead. And it feels like we always get those weeks when someone's chalky, they kind of bust, nobody plays them, and they do well the next week. I think the process here on Pacheco makes sense again at 5,700. They got to get a lead. They got to get up on Seattle, but I think they will. I think that, last week was weird. You look at the stats of that Houston game, well, they had 500 plus yards. Houston had like 220 yards. Like the game right. wasn't close. It was just some turnovers, some fluky stuff early kept it close, but that game wasn't really close football wise. You can never fully bank on that, but in general, you outgain someone that much, you're going to win the game and not in overtime. I like Pacheco this week as a play that people have burned by him a little bit last week. Everybody's going to want to play McKinnon. I kind of like Pacheco this week as a lower rostership play.
Yeah. And 200 cheaper too than McKinnon. So you got that going for you.
What do you like Kenneth Walker at all in this game? He's been a weird player where if he hits big plays, he works really well. But if he doesn't work well. A scary game script. He looked healthy last week though. They used him a lot. They're off a long week. I wasn't jumping at 6,400.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't. We have a note today saying he wasn't spotted practicing with the Seahawks' other healthy players during the media access portion of today's practice.
So he was practicing with the injured guys.
I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't with the healthy guys.
Oh, that's not great.
And he got hurt. He was missing in an earlier practice this week too on Tuesday in the walkthrough. By the way, I used the word walkthrough a billion times on the value meter this week. That's also a word crime. I'm exaggerating by an order of magnitude or two. But
beautiful.
Point is, I think because of this weird week, everybody was like, okay, Tuesday, we're going to do a walkthrough instead of usually a normal Wednesday practice. It's just a lighter Tuesday one instead. Hate this week. Hate the schedule.
Yeah, it's just so tough because, everybody played on Sunday. Now, I say everybody, but, again, exaggerating. But almost everybody played on Sunday. It was a normal slate. And then now the normal slate on Saturday. Almost a lot of teams have short weeks. It's just kind of the way.
And it's not just that. It's a short week, but we still have a Thursday game. Yep. We still have a Saturday night game.
Yep.
So we had our slate's on Saturdays. Christmas Eve, guy. Your Christmas is open. No, we had 3 terrible games on Sunday, including a Sunday night game. Okay,
and then a Monday game.
I have a dream job, but this is a terrible, family unfriendly slate. It's just horrible scheduling by the NFL. They're just greedy. Let the NBA have their Christmas Day. That's what they do.
I love NBA Christmas Day. The quintuple header. That's what I'll be watching. But I'll probably watch Packers Dolphins a little bit in the morning. But
I'm looking forward to that game.
I'm not turning into Rams Broncos, I doubt Arizona and Tampa either. But
yeah, exactly. And then
the ratings will be insanely huge. I get it. It's just the NFL runs all, but it's a rough schedule.
Yeah, and then Indy Chargers that actually I'm kind of intrigued by. We'll see.
Yeah, we had a question in the chat, Jeff. How do you think Indy's going to fare against the Chargers on Monday night?
Well, it might be the one time ever this year that Zach Moss is relevant because it's a perfect. Yep. Actually, he might be one of those sneaky 2 or 3 week plays down the stretch here because the Colts schedule is running back friendly these last 3 weeks. You know they're going to run the ball a lot with a new quarterback in there. And the Chargers, you do that against.
In leagues that still allow moves, he and Tyler Algier were kind of the two big plays. But I think I'd go Moss first just because, Algier's splitting carries with Patterson. But it'll be interesting. I mean, who knows what we see from Nick Foles. It can't be worse than what we saw from Sam Ehlinger and Matt Ryan. So it's who knows there. And the Chargers tend to play down to their opponent or up to their opponent. So who the heck knows what we get from them?
Exactly.
Real quick, let's a note from our sponsor, No House Advantage. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play a pick'em contest versus other people for the shot at winning big cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of $1,000s every single week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 extra entry if you hit all your picks. Bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including the NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up with promo code NHAWIRE. That's NHAWIRE at nohouseadvantage.com. Or download the app on the App Store to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined. It's not just how you play, but also where you play. You do not want to miss out on this. So, Jeff, as we do on the DFS pod here, want to look at the No House Advantage app. We appreciate them sponsoring us all year long. I sent you some props off this site. Let's get some people started on a couple you may like. I'll give you a couple I may like. We've done pretty well predicting these over the last few weeks, so hopefully it helps people out get those first couple picks out of the way. Give me a couple of over-unders here, either over-under that you liked of the list I sent you.
All right, so we've spent a lot of time talking Giants. I'm going to take Darius Slayton's over 57.5 receiving yards. Last 2 weeks, he didn't get there. But prior to that, 6 consecutive weeks where he got over 57.5. We know the Vikings' woes in the secondary. It could be one play where he cashes in on this one here for you. I really like the over on this one here. And I'm going to take the under on Nick Chubb, 85.5 rushing yards.
All right.
I am speaking against interest here. Nick Chubb's on my primetime team. I need him to do well, but I think he's got to be limited at best with just one practice, the foot injury. He could take one wrong cut and it could be all over. I mean, you win when that happens, unfortunately. And it could be performance-based too. I mean, the Saints aren't a pushover against the run. I don't think that although Tyler Algier disagrees with that characterization, but I think that there's a lot to go against. And I hate betting unders. It's not fun betting unders because you're never done. And it's also just a negative energy sort of thing. But I'm going to go under on Chubb here this week.
I like Nick Chubb has very quietly been not very good in the second half. As someone who has him at primetime too, I think it's like 3 straight games under 10 points. He was so good early on too. It's been rough. So I do like that. For mine, I'm going to kind of go with a couple guys we talked about. I'm going to go back to the last week I had Alvin Kamara over rush yards. I think I'm going to go back to that again. I think the weather is going to make this a strictly running game. He's 65.5 rush yards. He had whatever it was, 19 carries last week. Give me 16, 17 carries. I like him to go over that number again. So I'm going to go back to Kamara with 65.5 rush yards. And then I'm going to go Geno Smith this week. I like the over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I like the way this game script sets up. Sure. If they start hot, it's going to be because Geno's passing the ball. If they don't, it means that Geno's going to be passing the ball the entire second half. So give me one to DK, one to Noah Fant. I think he gets over the 1.5 passing touchdown mark there.
All right. I like both. And
just because I'm in a giving spirit, I like Amari Cooper under this week, 56.5. I think the way this game builds out, and anytime I can take an under that has to do with Deshaun Watson, I'm all about doing it.
Well, and Cooper's been crushed by Watson.
He has. The whole offense has been. They had that game where they had the 3 defensive touchdowns, 1 special teams, 2 defensive. But that offense does not look good with Deshaun so far.
Plus, Cooper's a little banged up, so all that applies.
And that weather, I think he goes under 56.5 yards. So I'll give you 3 this week just because it's Christmas week.
Kind of you.
Jeff, wide receivers. We talked about running. We talked about quarterbacks. We're going to jump to the pass catchers here before we get out of here. Expensive receivers. We kind of touched on 3 of them so far. Justin Jefferson's 9,300. Jamar Chase 8,300. DK is 7,100. I think those are all going to be pretty popular. Although I think Jamar gets the lowest rostership of those 3, just because he kind of is in a weird range where it's hard to afford him. If maybe you like, I'll just go up to Jefferson in the warm weather there, or I'll go down to DK in that high scoring game. I kind of listed the 3 that I think I like the most. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb earlier. Is there anybody else in this range you like? Diggs is 8,500. AJ Brown's 8,100. Amon-Ra is 7,800. Amon-Ra is still getting a lot of targets, but nothing downfield. So he's going to become very touchdown dependent, as much as I love Amon-Ra. T. Higgins is 7,000. Played 95% of the dropbacks last week, so obviously he was back to being healthy. What are you doing in this range? Anything different than kind of the guys we've already hit on?
Yeah, I know you guys were big on Amon-Ra earlier, but that was when he was in the 6,000 range. When he's 7,800, he's got to score. And
they have like 5 guys they throw to now too.
Yeah.
It's very weird how that passing tree is kind of expanded as Jamison Williams is back. Raymond gets in the mix. Josh Reynolds gets in the mix. They have a lot of guys they throw to right now. DJ Chark obviously too. That's 5 receivers right there that see time and see passes.
Right, exactly. And obviously don't forget the tight end as the Jets did last week. So that's also a possible option there.
I still know how they scored in that play.
Oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, he was silly wide open, but then how did they not floated the ball better on that? That was crazy.
They're such a good defense. It was just a weird play.
It was. I mean, I think CD is going to be super popular. And I think Metcalf, we talked about, is going to be mega popular. And I think for good reason. I don't think it's wrong. Sometimes it's okay to eat chalk, especially play a cash game. Go with it there. I mean, it's harder to get away with it in a tournament, but what do I know? I'm not Ryan. I haven't won major contests before. And
even in a tournament, like, you're going to have some guys that are probably, they do well. And there's so many ways in football you can get away from, and nobody's ever, it's not like basketball where you get guys that are 75, 80% owned that week, but you can get away with a little bit of it. Talk to me real quick. You got the Bengals hat on. Talk to me real quick about T. Higgins at 7,000. Is that too expensive for you? He only had 5 for 33 last week, but scored, had 8 targets. Do you like T. Higgins? Do you think he'll actually take the field this week? How are we going to do with T?
Well, he's not even on the injury report right now, so he'll be on. That'll be fine.
I joke just because we had the 2 weeks ago where
I know. And last week we're all in the late afternoon game, chock full of uncertainty. Was listed as questionable, and Boyd was, and they both scored.
T played the whole game.
Yeah, he did. So I think it's full go with him now. I trust here's the thing. Don't look at the injury report. Look at the practice report with him.
Yep.
He practiced fully on Friday. And I think that's the week before he was limited after being like full on Wednesday. He was limited with Thursday, Friday. That should have been our tell, no matter what roster shenanigans they played, injury report shenanigans they played. So trust what he does in practice. And anybody else on the Bengals for that matter.
He's fully priced. He has not been great the last maybe 2 months. He's been over 60 yards twice. Both those were without Jamar Chase playing.
Right.
Do you like him just in general? Obviously, Burrow's great. Chase is great. Outdoors in New England is not great. Do you think he's 7,000? I don't think anybody's going to have him, which is why I bring him up. He's going to be a very, very low rostered player, and get someone that talented with a good quarterback. It's intriguing when you get the low.
He could score twice. It's possible, but he needs to. Because the volume probably isn't going to be there. Weather is going to be an issue. I don't know if you can run that well against the pass, though. So that's the tricky part about that. So, yeah, I probably will join everybody else in not rostering him.
I just always like to bring up talented guys that aren't going to be rostered that week, just because those are the ones where you look up, you're like, damn, T. Higgins, 80 yards and 2 touchdowns.
You can dream on it, yeah.
The mid-range here, I mentioned there's a lot of cheap options, a lot of expensive options. The mid-range is a little more barren than we have in a while. Devontae Smith is 6,600. Ayuk is 6,300. Terry McLaurin in that game, 6,200. Juju, 5,800. And Darius Slayton, 5,200 are kind of the names that I at least listed on my sheet here. I don't know if there's anybody else you think I'm missing or anybody of those names you really like. But this is I've lived in this range all year, and I think this is one of the first weeks where I'm not going to live in this range because there's just not a lot of guys in here.
No. Talk to me about Ayuk. I mean, I think they're like Higgins. He needs to score for this to work.
Agreed.
The volume isn't there with him under Purdy, but the talent is. He's clearly good route running skills. Hands are a little iffy, and I think that sometimes that hurts him a little bit. But with no Debo again, in theory, it should be a game where he gets 8 to 10 targets, but he just never seems to get there.
Yeah, he had a bad drop. I think it was last week, and that would have been a pretty nice catch over the middle for a first down. My problem with Ayuk is I think I go the same game. I think I go to McLaurin instead, and it's hard to get both of them. They're the same. Sure. They're 6,300, 6,200. I actually like McLaurin this week. I don't think Washington's going to be able to run the ball against the 49ers at all. The Niners have been beat by wide receiver ones. Charvarius Ward's really good. He had a concussion last week, so I'm assuming he plays. He's really good. He played really well against DK when he was in the game last week. But McLaurin was 6 for 70 last week. I just think they're going to throw the ball a lot. I think the Niners will probably get ahead. They're favored. Who knows what happens, but I think they're 7.5-point favorites. I really like McLaurin this week because I don't like to play guys against the 49ers defense very much, but if I'm going to do it, it's got to be a receiver. It's got to be a receiver that's not overly expensive. And 6,200, I think it's plays well for their clear number one in a game where I think they have to throw the ball 30 times a week. I know they don't like to throw it 30 times with Heineke, but I think this is a week where they have to throw it 30 times. The weather's good. We talked about weather games. Surprisingly, San Francisco, Santa Clara, I guess I should say, is a little bit chilly, but very clear this week. So I think there'll be no weather concerns there. The field will be fine. So there's no weather concerns. And there's not many games we can say that about. So in this range, it's probably Juju off the big targets, but I like McLaurin at 6,200. I think he's the guy that I'm going to play in this range.
And McLaurin's not afraid of top cover corners. Remember what against Green Bay, he was dominant in that game against against Philly, against Slay. 8 for 128 in that game. Didn't score in that one there, but that would still pay the bills for you there at that price. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think Terry McLaurin's really good too. As a guy that I play a lot, and I do like him a lot. It's been not great with the touchdowns this year. It's been probably only has 3 scores all year, but I think it's gonna be a good week. I think it's a week where they throw the ball a lot in the second half, which is what you want from a wide receiver one. Down in the cheap options, under 5,000, there are a lot of names down here this week. They have priced some guys down. There are some guys who kind of broken out who have stayed down here. Before we jump into all of them, I want to ask you about a specific guy. I want to ask you about Gabe Davis, who's down here at 5,000.
My eyes just went to him. Yep.
If you had told me in September that Gabe Davis would be 5,000 on DraftKings, I would have assumed he'd been hurt for 8 weeks or something had happened, because obviously he was crazy popular in drafts. He moved up during draft season almost every week. It seemed like he was going a little bit higher. Just has been a full bust, I guess, which is crazy because Josh Allen's been healthy. This offense has been good, but outside of the top 40 at receiver in 6 of the last 8 weeks, he had 6 targets last week, 5 for 56. He had that one really big game where he had the 98-yard touchdown in the first drive first or second drive, the first quarter, either way. He was huge in the first half in that game. He's down to 5,000. The weather's bad here. Do you find yourself playing him, or you're just not even going to bother this week?
I probably won't.
I don't think I will either, which is crazy. It's just, I think if the weather was good, I think I might be like, you know what, 5,000 is absurd. I'm gonna risk it with Josh Allen. Hope to hit a big one, but if you stick the bad weather in there and the way he's been, I don't think I could do it either.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather go all the way down to DJ Chark at 42 if I'm going to find a cheap receiver. Chark got shut down last week against the Jets, but the Jets are just destroy outside receivers.
Yep.
I think he bounces back this week, and you get the same big playability. You're not going to get a ton of targets, but you'll get 6 to 8 targets probably, and for $800 cheaper.
And no one's going to have Chark this week. A lot of people had him the last couple of weeks. No one's going to have the Jets. He was low, but the week before he was pretty popular, did really well. I think with Marquise Goodwin at 4,300, I think as long as he plays, he's going to suck up that roster ship in this range. He's been very active when DK or Lockett's not been on the field. Right. Nice game script here against Kansas City. Obviously, people want to. You always see when you have the highest total game, you want to find some cheap parts of it, and he's a really nice
for
cheap
sure.
part of it.
I like that one too.
And obviously,
wrist and ankle issues though. Just watch for him. He was limited yesterday.
It is always something with Marquise Goodwin. As a 49er fan who had him on the team for many years, it's always something. I like him a lot. He's like a really good guy too. I think everybody liked him, but he's always something injury prone.
Typical sprinter.
He is that's a good point. We got a lot of names down here in 5,000. There's a lot of guys you can play. I think this is a week where you can get maybe 2 guys down here and really ramp up everybody else. We got Drake London down here at 4,800. Had 11 targets with Desmond Ridder last week, 23 targets last 2 weeks. He's kind of was popular early on, and then he's kind of gone away. In the last couple of weeks, he's been getting back. Should be a good game script trailing against Baltimore, but again, we got some weather issues there. Jacoby Myers is down here at 4,800. He could have had a big game last week and then dropped a touchdown and then threw the ball to Chandler Jones, which did not work out especially great at the end of the game. Chris Moore is 4,700 down here. KJ Osborne off 16 targets last week, and an indoor game is 4,500. Who you like in this 4,000 range? There's a lot of names I could go through.
I'm going to go one below the 4,000 range.
Oh, Jahan Dotson?
Yes, sir. 3,900.
Really
if you're going to go low. And Dotson looks the part. It's always volume is the question for him. But
he had a spin move last week that was nasty. I was like, there's Jahan Dotson. My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, he's the last 2 weeks, 9 and 6 targets, and this is a game where we project them to be behind.
Yep.
Kind
of everything we said for McLaurin goes for Dotson. Just not as good, but a lot cheaper. He's 2,300 less than McLaurin,
but good.
Yeah,
but very good.
Yes.
And it's a question of this is a week where they can't run the ball 40 times. They're going to, if Ron Rivera has them run it 40 times, he should be fired over the loudspeaker on the road. I mean, it should be that bad. I mean, it's just awful. The thing is, like, he gets it backwards. Like last week, Brian Robinson's just killing the Giants, and he can't get the ball enough. This week, he'll probably get it 37 times.
Yeah, if he gets it 37 times, something really weird happened in this game. Either Rivera messed up or somehow the Niners had the entire defense line get hurt. I don't know what it is, but and even if they have so much depth on the line. But the thing I like with Dotson the most, and I was going to bring him up at the end here, he's 3,900 in this game where they should be trailing. You look at the snaps, and like the snaps are back up to what they were the first 3 weeks of the season. He was playing a lot early, then he got hurt, and they kind of ramped him up. It was like 34, 45, 38 snaps last 2 weeks, 67 and 50. He's a full go. You mentioned the 15 targets last 2 weeks. Yeah, I think you love a guy like this in the fourth quarter if they have to pass. Like, he's just a red zone guy, too. He can make a big play. I think he's actually – you brought him up, but I think he's actually my favorite play in the super cheap range. I think I'm going to have some Dotson this week for sure.
Yeah, I think so, too. In fact, I like like you do this with golf sometimes. Find the cheapie, and then you can build accordingly after that there. And you could start you could even go both he and Goodwin, and then go super expensive everywhere else.
Yeah, or if you like Chris Moore in that game, if Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks sit, Chris Moore 4,700, a lot of targets, although it's a weather issue too.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Robinson's in here too at 4,000, a lot of targets the last 5 weeks, but again, a weather game too. And I hate tying myself to the Ravens passing game too much. But you've also got, in a game that's indoors and expensive and cheap, Noah Brown at 3,600 had 2 touchdowns last week on 9 targets. He was 4 for 85 the week before. You worry about the usage before that, but it seems like the last couple of weeks he's been more involved than Michael Gallup has been.
Yeah, but he's got a foot issue that's something to watch for with him too. But
why are you always dampening my love with these injury reports?
No, I'm not. Don't mean to, dude.
It's good. But... It's very important, and obviously, check those injury reports. A good reminder on Saturday morning. That's really important. But
right.
I like Noah Brown as a player. I think when he flashes, when he plays, and I don't think Gallup he had that 2 touchdown game, but Gallup has not looked like the old Gallup so far.
No, it's more of a trot. And it's just.
I can't believe I set you up for that. So
I know. Well,
I didn't even mean to softball that one, and I did.
You missed me. Yeah. Gallup only had 2 targets, so it played 68 snaps and managed 2 targets. Very weird line as far as that goes. But yeah, and they were starting to kind of focus on him and like target him in the red zone. That Colts game, he was like a big part of that game. And then he just kind of went away. It's very weird. I stay away from Rashid Shaheed this week. Weather apocalypse. Stay away from that.
What do you do with KJ Osborne? That's the last thing I want to ask you about this range. He had, he had, I think it was 13 targets the last 4 weeks, and then 16 last week against the Colts. Obviously, it was a weird game. They were trailing big the entire game, but 10 for 157 to touchdown. Baltimore has been the Giants. Defense is fine. Do you chase the huge game with Osborne? I think Adam Thielen only had 4 targets in that game, even though they were trailing the whole way. He didn't think he scored, but he only had 4 targets. Do you see this at all as a changing of the guard, a wide receiver too? You think it's kind of a fluky game where that just kind of worked out that way?
I think probably the latter, because if you look at a snap count, the 46, 43, 36, 40, the previous 4 games. I think that is probably more illustrative, but at the same time, they were trailing Detroit almost all in the previous week too. So you would think that he would have got, game script would have got him on the field a little bit more often, but I mean, maybe he just found a matchup that worked and kept on going to it.
That was kind of my thought too. They was something was working. They were trailing. Maybe it was the Colts soft defense, whatever it was, and he was kind of underneath. But it was crazy. 16 targets really just jumps off the page when he had 3, 2, 3, and 5 the weeks before.
Yeah, I'm not going to chase him, but I'm afraid not to chase him. Does that make sense?
It does, especially you got a game indoors. We're looking for games with some, some track meet potential back and forth.
Yeah.
I just think I probably end up with with Dotson and Goodwin and maybe Chris Moore in this range more than I do Osborne.
Yeah, and Chris Moore, I mean, 2 weeks ago he was huge.
Yeah, I played him 2 weeks ago. It was really nice. He had 9 targets last week. He didn't come through, but the fact that he has 20 targets last 2 weeks is pretty huge. Good game script too. They're 7-point dogs to Tennessee. Obviously, you need Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks to sit, which I don't think Cooks is going to play again. But
Cooks
is he actually?
Cooks was a full participant yesterday.
Was he really? I think
he's closer than Collins.
I kind of thought he was going Operation Shutdown mode, but I guess not. So that's if Cooks plays, I probably don't bother with more. I just play the other guys in this range, to be honest.
Yeah, Collins didn't practice. Cooks was full. So if anybody comes back, it's going to be Cooks this week.
Yeah, I think I'd move to Drake London. I'd move to other guys who mentioned this range. I think that if Cooks plays, I don't love Chris Moore as much as I have the last couple of weeks.
Sure.
What about tight end this week? We've got the separator. Travis Kelce is like
such a massive golf now.
2,500 more than Mark Andrews. It looks like he's 8,000. And obviously, if you spend up, he's the only one up there. You can do it, but it's just tough to get there. You've got to plan for it. But if you play Mahomes, you kind of have to do it with the stack because he's the main guy there. They spread the ball so much with the other receivers, although Juju's been really involved. But Kelce's 8,000. What do you like at tight end? I'll just kind of open it up to you. Usually I go cheap here. There's a couple guys I like, but I'm going to go with you first. Who do you like at tight end this week?
First of all, you have to do the Kelce or no Kelce question. I think if you go Dotson Goodwin, you can afford Kelce Mahomes.
It's a good point. We talked about how that stack is tough to get to, but it's obviously the best. We've shown that there's a lot of ways you can get there.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't like a whole lot here otherwise. I think Hawkinson's playable at 49. You get so many targets.
I love that one this week.
Yeah. I think that's
my favorite one. I think under 5,000. Quiet last week, only 33 yards. We had 9 targets. The volume's up in Minnesota. He doesn't run as many deep routes in Detroit, but the Giants aren't good against tight ends. Look at his targets in Minnesota: 9, 6, 6, 8, 9 last 5 weeks. I just think he's he's when his game is going to score, and I think this is probably the week for it. I really like Hawkinson under 5,000 this week.
Yeah, from the word go, from the moment he got traded, he's been heavily involved, and you got to love seeing that there.
Been great for Jefferson too, because Jefferson runs a lot more deep routes now that Hawkinson's underneath. It's been really good for both of them.
Yeah, agreed. So I think that's probably the if I'm not going to pay for Kelce, I go Hawkinson. I don't think I deal with any of the others. I mean, like Chig, I'd be interested in, except it's going to be Malik Willis almost certainly. They're talking Tannehill might not play again ever.
Yeah, my final note on Okonkwo, I just go with Chig. I should go with you, but is I want Tannehill in to use him, and that was before Tannehill got ruled out. I was looking at this game, so I don't think I go there. I think Dalton Schultz at 4,200 is fine. He usually is, really good with Dak playing full snaps now. He's really quiet last week, but again, an indoor game, and his quarterback's healthy. I think that Schultz at 4,200 works pretty well. The other game I like down here, and I think that he benefits from no Tyler Lockett, is actually Noah Fant. Again, you're trying to get a cheap part of the highest scoring game. I think at 3,400, Fant works really nicely. He was 6 targets last week, scored. I think if you're going to go cheap and kind of punt tight end, I don't love anybody in the 2,000s this week. So Fant was my play at 3,400. I just, if I want to get a piece of this game, it's going to be high scoring back and forth. Seattle should be trailing. Give me Fant with no Tyler Lockett. I think he's a beneficiary of Lockett not playing.
Yeah. I like that one a lot. It's just, and not to rain on your sunshine a little bit there. He didn't practice yesterday.
Is anybody practicing, Jeff?
I don't know. It's a lot of red.
It's that time of year in the NFL. Yeah, obviously. And Fant is one of those guys you always have to check on. He's always got something. So
yeah, he and Njoku. I got asked about Njoku versus Fant on Twitter. Right. And I think I said Njoku, but now I'm kind of having third thoughts there. And, Njoku's banged up. Fant's banged up.
Yeah.
Njoku's in weather apocalypse. Fant's kind of, sort of, but not really. But if you got a bad knee, a really cold place is bad.
Yeah, that's true. 10 degrees or whatever, no matter if there's rain or not, is not a really fun play. But yeah, that's a weather report check. I think that I'm going to go if he's fine, I might go there. But I find myself gravitating more towards Hawkinson and Schultz. I think in most of my lineups.
Yeah. Any Brock Wright love after that touchdown? Probably not.
Probably not. Outdoor golf and all that. But yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to punt it. There's not a lot. Usually there's a lot more. There's a few more like really good punt tight ends. I don't think I could get there on a lot of these guys this week.
I just looked at the target volume for Brock Wright, and it's the game log. It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. There was the week like 3 weeks ago or like 5 weeks ago after they traded Hawkinson, we're trying to figure it out. And Brock Wright was like 2,700. We're like, oh, this is the way, you could do it. Maybe if he plays, it has not worked out. It's hard to count on that one touchdown. And I try and stay away from that as much as I can, but I understand it's tight end if you want to get really cheap, but probably not where I'm going this week.
No, I don't think so. I'm looking at Jordan Akins at 29, and he had 6 targets last week and a touchdown, had 6 targets 3 weeks ago, 5 targets the week before that, and scored against the Dolphins. But still, there's a 2-target game in there. There's still, and hey, 2 tight ends. I mean, and 2 quarterbacks. Well, 3 tight ends if you count Jeff Driscoll. I mean, it's so weird to see him listed at tight end in some places. It's worse than Taysom Hill even. That's possible.
It is really bad. I always look for a cheap tight end. I think Akins is the one that, like, if you're getting under 3,000, I could see it, but I probably hope Fant plays, or I'd probably just find my way to get up to Schultz if I wanted to get a little cheaper. But
yeah, we can't even get the Arizona factor this week. They're not on that slate.
Yeah, I know. I love attacking Arizona there too. But let's talk about defense real quick before we jump out of here. What do you like at defense this week if you're trying to win some tournaments this week?
I mean, I like them all. There's a lot to like this week. But do you pay up for Baltimore against Desmond Ridder? Baltimore's defense is just rolling right now, and they're only 3,200, so it's not like you're not paying 4,000 for them.
That is, they're easily my favorite play on this slate at defense, and I like the fact you don't have to. The Niners are 3,900. The Browns I like, but the 3,800. I really like the Ravens in that kind of middle pocket. You mentioned facing Ridder, could be some rough. They have multiple sacks in 10 straight games. The Falcons gave up 4 sacks last week in Ridder's first game. I just think that every once in a while you worry about whether, like, will teams just get so uber conservative that they don't do anything. So I do worry about that a little bit, but I think the Ravens are going to just match the Falcons. I think the Ravens defense is really going to be really good this week. I agree. Probably my favorite one at 3,200. I like the Chiefs at 2,900. I know we talked about this game be high scoring, but the Seattle offensive line is not good.
No,
they've allowed 10 sacks last 3 weeks, 3+ sacks in 5 straight games, and the Chiefs can get after you a little bit. You can score on them, but they can rush you a little bit. So at 2,900. I know everybody's going to play Dallas at 2,600 against a backup quarterback, but like I said, Dallas's defense is not going. They only have 1 sack last 2 weeks. I know Micah Parsons is still out there, and they're 2,600. I think I lean more towards Kansas City and Baltimore if maybe get a few more bucks in there if I can afford it. I like those two more than Dallas this week. I think Dallas will be really popular too.
So I think the idea of Micah Parsons is better than the actual play of Micah Parsons, at least when it comes to, maybe it's because it's one of those where they're accounting for him so much. As someone who paid up for him in the stake league, he's good. There's games where, he's amazing. He's unstoppable. He's Micah Parsons. He's the name guy. But sometimes it doesn't necessarily follow. Watch him have like 4 sacks this week.
As someone who has Nick Bosa at 12-1 to win Defensive Player of the Year, I hope that holds on Parsons for another couple weeks. I think Bosa's kind of evened it up. He was trailing in the last 4 weeks. I think Bosa's gotten. I think they're neck and neck right now for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, Parsons hasn't really had this statistical production you'd think that comes with that there. Someone, he's got a high floor, but it's not really like the ceiling hasn't been there the last few weeks.
I admit that I'm biased, but I think Bosa's the best defense player in the league. I think he's just every play, even doesn't get not the ones that get sacks. Like, he's in there every single play. It's just there's a lot of games where I end up just watching him on defense, and it's amazing how productive he is.
And it's just that you have to account for him.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
They double team. He still gets there. It's just, when you get Armstead in there, like, both, it's nasty. And D'Amico Ryans is a really good defense coach. They run some like really cool stunts and twists where they get Bosa open because obviously they're focusing on him and they find ways to get him open. I think if D'Amico doesn't get hired to be a head coach, it'd be a shame this year. I think he will, though. I think he's gone.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Defensive lineman note: Bengals are down their top 2 defensive ends. Hendrickson and Hubbard are hurt.
I knew Hendrickson was out, but I didn't know Hubbard was out.
Hubbard suffered a calf injury last week against the Bucs, and he's definitely going to miss this week.
I like Hubbard. He's a good player.
He is.
Yeah. Anybody else on defense you want to talk about? Any of these expensive ones? I find myself paying down, but the Bills make sense. The Niners make sense. The Browns make sense. You can play with all these. I just think I won't be able to afford it this week.
Yeah, and I think the Niners would be fun, but if you can afford it. But I think the Ravens might be the top defense period this week, and you're getting $800 savings, $700 in savings. Why not go that route unless you're just worried about ownership percentages?
Agreed there too. Anybody else you want to talk about in this slate? I feel like we've kind of hit all the price tiers, all the positions. Anybody else you want to talk about? Anything else on your mind?
No, I'm just excited to see the games now, and I'm excited to put together a couple lineups.
Yeah, I think we got some good stuff here, so I'm looking forward to it. Also, it's gonna be an interesting slate with the weather. I think it's obviously, like we said, Saturday morning is going to be a lot of shifting and moving, probably more than normal, just based on what we see. Whatever network you choose to watch cuts away to their reporter on the scene. We'll get some good indications of how windy and snowy some of these places are. So hopefully it holds off in some games. You want to see some points. This is a tough. For season long, this is a tough week. You got a lot of matchups that are, the second week of the playoffs in NFC. A lot of, if you're in your home league or a regular league, it's like the, semifinals of playoffs. It's tough to have a lot of guys where you have to think about the weather. Guys you play every week. You're like, I don't know what I could do this week. It's gonna impact a lot of leagues.
Yep, it could.
So, Well, thanks everybody for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We appreciate No House Advantage for their sponsorship. More importantly, I want to thank Jeff for jumping on. It was a last minute thing. Ryan had some travel issues, and Jeff jumped right in without a second thought. So I appreciate that, and it was good to see you and good to talk to you. I've missed seeing your face.
Yeah, I know. Likewise, I missed that we didn't get to talk about Will Myers signing with the Reds right now. Huge offseason acquisition there. Just quadrupled anything that they spent in this offseason. But nonetheless, thrilled to be talking.
Not quite as sexy as the A's signing Drew Rudnicki out of the Japanese, the Korean League. When you're rebuilding, when you can get a 34-year-old starter, I mean, how do you pass on that?
Do it.
It's insane. We got a lot to talk about baseball. We should do a before we really get going. We should do a surprise guest one there somewhere. There's a lot to talk about.
All right, we'll do it.
Well, Jeff, thanks for jumping on. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back at you next week. Is next week a Saturday slate also because it's New Year's Day on Sunday?
No, it's Sunday. There's no bowl games.
Sunday? Oh, that's right. There's no bowl games because I knew the Rose Bowl was on the second, but that makes sense. So we do have we'll be back at a regular slate. So Ryan and I will be back at you next Friday. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a really good week and good luck with your lineups this week.